Hello and welcome to another live edition of Seminole Sidelines presented by the Osceola, the Florida State rival site. I'm Pat Burnham. I'll be your host, and I'm joined by Osceola senior writer Kurt Weiler and the man, the myth, the legend himself, the recruiting guru of all recruiting gurus, Charles Fishmine. And Fish is really sticking with the Sox hat. And of course, now I know that it has nothing to do with the Chicago White Sox. He coaches his son's baseball team. But hey, a ton of stuff going on the football field, on the recruiting trail, and so we're going to get right to it. The FSU held practice number 12 yesterday in full pads, and another, as we've gotten to see, a pretty spirited practice, as most of them have been. But probably the biggest news going into practice, Kurt and Fish, was the fact that starting right guard, last year's starting right guard, Dimitri Emmanuel, got an extra year of eligibility and will be back at Florida State in the fall, and actually was back on the practice field yesterday. We'd seen him around the practice field, but he was dressed out and going through drills and 100%. So let's just start there, Kurt. Let's start with Dimitri. Kind of your thoughts on what that does for Florida State's offense as a whole. Obviously, he was one of the surprises of last year, was very solid in his contribution to what was one of the best rushing offenses in the nation. And then obviously its impact on the offensive line itself.
Yeah, I by no means saw this as a kind of must for Florida State. I mean, there are past years where this situation, they kind of almost would have needed Dimitri Emmanuel. They didn't need him, I don't think, by any means. I think they would have been okay depth-wise even without him. But, I mean, the addition of him and bringing back a guy who was in his first year at Florida State a third-team All-ACC player, I think graded out kind of around a Dylan Gibbons if you look at PFF. And, I mean, just another piece that you're bringing back. I think you're returning over 40 starts from last year, really only losing Dylan Gibbons and Jazz Turnentine. It's just – It adds to that depth. I mean, we've talked about how the room finally feels like it's flipped after kind of years of work by Alex Atkins. And I think adding Dimitri too, and there was a bit of uncertainty around that one, kind of drills it home.
Yeah. And Fish, your thoughts on getting Dimitri back? Obviously you watch a lot of all the games, and you know the depth at that position. You know that room as well as anybody that follows the program. What are your thoughts on getting Dimitri back?
Yeah, I think it's huge. One, because you want some experience and someone that's comfortable, that's played there, losing Dylan Gibbons and your Emmanuel at the same time. It's, they've got guys that could fill in, but they can lean back and feel a little more comfortable going into the season with someone that has a bunch of starts under their belt. I think it's a huge addition. When we had discussed offensive line on another podcast, and when you had put up the chart, you take Dimitri Emmanuel out and you take Dylan Gibbons out, there were some question marks. Like you would have some concerns on the interior. Yes, Maurice Smith is there, but you're relying on newcomers, guys that haven't played together, don't know each other's ways. And this guy is comfortable in this system. Is he comfortable with Coach Atkins? So I think it's a big time get him back.
Yeah, and the other thing it does is it gives FSU, besides that veteran experience, gives them some flexibility on who plays where. We obviously cannot talk specifics, Kurt, but we've seen some adjusting going on around the offensive line. I think what we're starting to see is the offensive line starting to take shape on who's going to play where. But with Dimitri back, he's definitively a guard. He's either going to be right guard or left guard. I would imagine he'll go back to right guard. But it does give FSU some flexibility on the offensive line. And then, listen, the reality of this is the transfer portal is fixing to open up, and it could have an impact on that as well. We're not saying it may very well may not, but it very well may because it's a deep group.
Yeah, there's absolutely a world where you have to maybe dissuade some guys who may be kind of the linemen of the future, who may kind of feel ready to be the linemen of now, to not look elsewhere. I mean, path to the field this year with as many guys they have. I mean, talented guys like Julian Armella, like Bryson Estes. I'm not saying by any means that any of these guys are going to transfer, but you probably just have to sit down with them and say, hey, we're going to try and find a role for you this year. And like next year, we're looking at you. Cause I mean, like, I think you look at this time next year, they're going to be replacing quite a few guys. It'll be interesting to see. I mean, you do have as young as guys like Maurice, as Darius Washington, as Robert Scott, all started playing. I mean, I think they could all be back in 2024, but it's chances are you don't return all of them, and you'll lose probably. I think all 2 of the 3 transfers I know only have 1 year, so you'll have plenty of holes, and so you just have to kind of have those conversations. And I mean, it's the price to pay as a team improves from where Florida State was in 2020 and 2021 to now. But yeah, it gives you a lot of flexibility. I think Alex Atkins, I mean, he'll talk about liking to have, I think, 8 dependable offensive linemen that he can rely on. I think you have that easily. You may have more than that. I mean, you don't want to throw especially newcomers or maybe a redshirt freshman into too big a role, but I think by the time preseason rolls around, if kind of the injury gods are on their side, they could have 10 guys who they feel, and you might have a true 2 deep where it's not, oh, our starting center went down, we have to move our right guard over there or our right tackle over there. Some of the stuff that they've had to kind of do the last few years as injuries have happened.
Yeah, I think I agree with you, Kerr. I think by the time they get through the end of fall camp and head into LSU week, they could certainly be 2 deep, a solid 2 deep at each position. Where you're right, they don't have to do as much cross training. You're set. You're where you are is where you're going to play type of thing. And listen, the flexibility not only comes on who can play where, but let's be honest, the portal or before it was even their transfer portal. When kids transferred in and out of programs, it's not only instigated by the kids in some instances, it's also instigated by the program. And of course, again, we want to preface this by saying we don't know that anybody's going to transfer out, but it does. But the reality of it is college coaches have one-on-one meetings with kids at the end of fall and at the end of spring. And sometimes a kid is told, hey, listen, there may be a better place for you. So it gives FSU not only flexibility in where people line up, but how they manage their roster.
It speaks to, I mean, how far the group has come, that there's absolutely a world where Florida State loses a offensive lineman they'd rather not lose this offseason just because of how far that unit's come and how deep that room is now.
Yeah, it's listen, when we started this endeavor with the Osceola in 2019, I'm not sure you could find 5 offensive linemen that were major college caliber. So listen, we have said this many, many times over the course of the last year. What they have done with the offensive line since Mike Norvell, and really the entire roster, if you want to be honest, with the exception of maybe 1 or 2 positions, has been really really impressive. And listen, like I said, it gives them flexibility in many areas with Emmanuel coming back. And now I think they have 8 to 9 guys on this roster of the offensive line that have started a ton of ball games in college. When you take into fact Casey Roddick and Jeremiah Byers and Keandre Jones, the newcomers, and of course, for some of those guards that are some of those guys playing guards, Dimitri, there's more competition now. So it's a good thing for Florida State. We've seen competition make this team, internal competition, make this team better. And I think it will do that for that position too.
Yeah. I mean, I wrote a story yesterday. I mean, I kind of sit down and did the math. Florida State returns 100 starts on the offensive line at FSU. That's not counting any of the transfer additions. And I think it's over 200, like 214 or so, I want to say, of total starts in college football. I mean, that is a loud number. That is what you want to see, because that experience, I mean, is a pretty big deal.
Yeah, and listen, I would have to, and I don't know, Kirk, I'd have to go back and look at it, but I would have to think that's one of that'd be in the top 25 offensive as far as number of starts, probably top 25 in the country, and it may be better than that, but I think it would definitely be in the top 25%.
And I imagine even more than that, it's probably one of the top numbers of those top 25 preseason teams. There might be some who have that experience, but they have holes elsewhere. They are lower down the list. Like, they're not a team that's going to contend. Of the contenders, you have to imagine that's among the top. I mean, Georgia goes through linemen. Alabama goes through linemen. And Florida State's starting to a little bit, but they're kind of at the front end of that now, to where they still are going to reap all they've sowed.
Yeah, listen, it was good. You know, listen, we've seen, and just from a human nature perspective, we've seen Dimitri at practice every day, almost every day, if not every day. He's been with the team. You could tell he wanted to come back. He wore his jersey. He was in shorts, just observing, and sometimes charting and stuff like that. We always, there were some thought on, just got us talking up in the baseball stadium, well, maybe he's getting ready to prepare to become a coach, a GA, a student assistant, whatever. And that may be ultimately what he does when he's done with his playing career. But you're happy for him, right? Because he wanted that extra year.
Well, yeah, and he went, like you said, he went through pro day a few weeks ago. I think kind of on the chance of, hey, I haven't gotten this waiver yet. I kind of want to be able to do that in case I don't get the waiver. And so, yeah, he went through pro day as recently as a couple weeks ago. So, yeah, to turn around and get that. I mean, yeah, it's and it's definitely, I think, a benefit of the COVID year helps you. Where, I mean, that it feels like they've been extra like friendly, both giving out the waivers in the wake of COVID. I mean, we're going to deal with COVID eligibility long after the COVID pandemic. I mean, so, but yeah, it's a good deal for him. Definitely, I think a nice chance for him to. I mean, just another piece you're bringing back. We've talked about all the guys who chose to come back. I mean, he's a guy who kind of seems like fought to come back. I mean, going through that waiver process definitely showed he wanted to come back and be a part of this.
Yeah, and listen, we know continuity is a big thing, and obviously that experience in working with some of these guys. He's worked side by side with Maurice Smith for almost the entire season. He's played with next to Bless Harris before, who, Bless will be back in the fall. He's back now, but obviously he'll be back at one of the tackle spots in the fall. So you can line up next to him. And plus it helps if Jeremiah Byers or somebody else is supposed to end up next to him. Obviously it gives you somebody that's understands the calls and what FSU does schematically if someone's got any questions. So I think it's huge. Fish, you got any thoughts on the Dimitri Emmanuel other than just the flexibility it gives them both within those 5 position spots and what it means on the roster?
No, I listen. You can never have enough O linemen and D linemen. If they want to be back in the fold, you tell them to come back in the fold. I like I said before, he's a big addition because I think they had some question marks inside. You really didn't know what you were going to get so far from the younger guys and the transfer guys. I haven't heard. I've heard good reports on some of the interior guys, but I've also heard some mixed reports as well, where the consistency day to day in practice they haven't been as good. So I've heard great things about Byers, but he's mainly been talked more about as a tackle than a guard. It's that inside. Emmanuel's going to solidify one of the spots. Now the second guy will come from what they have on the roster, and I think they're in a good spot. The O-line's very important, and they got a good interior offensive line, probably one of the best in the ACC, if not in the country.
Yeah, I definitely think I agree with you on the ACC part. I haven't had enough time to watch a lot of the other programs in the country, but certainly in the ACC. All right, Kurt, now you do a very detailed practice report each and every day. Practice number 12 was in the books after last night. Had some famous people on campus to watch practice. You had former Cowboy coach Jason Garrett was there, and former Cowboys tight end and Monday Night Football analyst Jason Witten, one of the greatest tight ends ever to play. We're watching. Of course, they have a relationship with Mike Alford, FSU's director of athletics, from his days at the Cowboys. But what we were more worried about was what was going on the field. What were some of your top takeaways?
Yeah, I mean, I know Mike Norvell talked about quite a few things. I think one, he was not happy about, I think, some of the drops that hindered some of the offense. I know Kentron Portier, who we've been really high on in the spring, had a few drops earlier in the practice. I thought he bounced back really well. But Mike also talked pretty candidly about we have a few receivers who are limited. So that kind of hurts our depth at the position. Micah Pittman was out there watching, but I don't think Mike is, not anywhere close to returning. You hope he's available at some point in the season is kind of the timeline for that torn labrum. It's a pretty serious recovery for that hip injury. But yeah, I think that was it was nice to see Kentron respond as the practice went on. And Dravius Jacobs, another guy we've been high on, had some nice plays. I think the offensive player who may have impressed me the most, Lawrence Toafili. I think he gets lost in the shuffle somewhat, and understandably so. It's a crowded room. We like what we've seen from Trey Benson. We've liked what we've seen from Rodney Hill really since he's been on campus. And all 3 of those guys are probably going to have roles. But it was a day, I think, where LT kind of was like, don't forget about me. I think he was really active as a pass catcher, had a few really nice runs where he showed off that his athleticism or acceleration, I should say, how quick he can get to top speed is really impressive, and he can hit some holes, and did that on Tuesday, was pretty impressive. I also like what I saw from Brock Glenn. I think we talked to Brock yesterday. The video's on our YouTube channel, and he talked pretty candidly about, this has been tougher than I thought it was going to be, but I like that, and I feel like I've grown through it and kind of risen to the challenge and grown more comfortable. This year's obviously about just learning the playbook, building chemistry with teammates. For Brock, before that, kind of already talked about 2024 quarterback battle. But I like what I've seen from Brock this spring. I think I'm fascinated to see how he carries it into the fall. I mean, the fall, I imagine when you're really not going to play outside of maybe late in 4 games like Brock in the fall, it could be hard to kind of come out and work hard and practice day in and day out. I think we saw that a little with AJ Duffy last year, and interested to see how he handles it. But I like what I've seen from him this spring. I think he's the real deal. I know you're also liked what you've seen, Pat.
Yeah, listen, I don't want to get overly excited because like I said, he should be in high school right now.
Yep.
But I will say this about Brock. He seems to carry himself a little bit differently. I'm as particularly for a young guy. He's got a little swagger about him. He's got a little, we've heard Mike talk about his composure. He's kind of a cool, calm customer on the field. And I'm sure as they've gotten more and more into spring practice and more offensive plays, more reads, he's seeing more looks from the defense, more coverages, more blitz packages. I'm sure it's gotten harder. But listen, I've said this when they first started practice. I had a coach walk by me, not an FSU coach, but a coach that was at practice. And he said, listen, there's something different about the way that ball comes out of that hand and the way he carries himself. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing his development. I think it will be very interesting to see when we come back in the fall if he can put himself in serious contention for that number 2 spot. I don't think he's done anything that says he can't. So that's going to be interesting. I think that's going to be a fascinating battle between Tate, and AJ for who's going to back up Jordan. And then go back to listen, I called Lawrence last year in the fall the silent assassin. You just don't realize he's there until he makes a big play that hurts you. He's got he's a very quiet kid. He doesn't draw a lot of attention to himself until he gets the ball in his hand. And so, listen, that's a deep running back room. I think you're going to have a chance from all 4 or 5 guys to shine at different times in the fall. And there was actually a recruit on campus that plays running back yesterday. And one of the things that he likes about the Florida State offense, and one of the reasons I'm hopeful that Florida State will retain all these guys, is the fact that the recruit said all four guys last year got plenty of touches between game 1 and game 13. And so, listen, there's going to be he likes the fact that these guys rotate in and out. So, listen, I think Lawrence certainly is a guy that is a weapon. And I think because he's so – I don't know what the adjective I'm looking for, but so unassuming, so quiet that, you kind of don't notice him. He's just a guy that goes about his business each and every day. Shows up with a workman-like mentality. And yes, but I think he's got a chance to have another tremendous impact on this offense, and he has stood out. And of course, we're finally, as deeper we're getting into spring, we're talking more and more about the veterans starting to stick out, right? I mean, we saw Darrell Jackson and Josh Farmer dominated, in my opinion, one-on-one pass rush drills yesterday on the inside. We're finally seeing more Tafasi. That kid plays with such great leverage and is such a force. And this was in 11-on-11, not pass rush. But Tafasi looked really good yesterday. I know, Kurt, you've been impressed with him. He's one of those guys that we're all very excited after what we'd seen in the fall practice. And I don't think as he's gotten more reps, because he did not, he wasn't there for the entire spring. You've seen why we were so excited. And then, of course, the other thing I noticed is that I thought Byers and Bless Harris looked very good in pass pro one-on-one protection yesterday.
Yeah, Bless had a few reps. I wrote about it in my practice report. I think Verse went against them. Those two, normally match up as guys like who are potential first team guys, in the mix there. Bless, we know what Verse is.
Yeah.
And the first time, I think he tried to kind of give him a bull rush and got stonewalled by Harris. And Verse, being the competitor he is, the talker he is, was kind of like, I want to go again. I want to go again. Second time, he tried an inside spin move, and Harris stayed in front of him. I mean, the mobility of him, he definitely can move like a tackle. I mean, to stay in front of Verse when he pulls off a spin move like that, he got pushed back a little, but he didn't kind of fully get beat, whereas a lot of guys in the country would get fully beat by that Verse spin move. I think he had another rep. Who'd he beat? I think you want to say he also kind of held off Byron Turner, kind of pushed Byron Turner around the back of the pocket, used the wide rush to his advantage, kind of pushing him way behind the play. So, yeah, I think, Bless has definitely picked up right where he left off. You talked about Farmer. I mean, I think Dimitri Emmanuel in one-on-ones was kind of tasked with Farmer. Yeah, it's kind of like throwing the sharks a bit in his first day back out there. It was, I think Farmer won both pretty handily, kind of blew by him, and it was like this is what I've been missing. And it's not a knock on Emmanuel. I thought he had a really nice play later in the day. In 11 on it, where he hit a second level block. I think drew a lot of praise from one of the offensive line coaches. But yeah, I think.
And let's be honest. Listen, there was a little rust. He hadn't faced live bullets since the Oklahoma game. Listen,
it's understandable.
Yeah. I mean, it's like it's like hitting the ball off the tee than having Nolan Ryan throw you a fastball. So
I mean, Josh, there's definitely a bit of Josh Farmer. I think we were also impressed with Daryl Jackson, how he looks, and Daryl Jackson looks the part physically, has been really impactful in practice. But I've been maybe even more impressed with Josh Farmer. I mean, he's been one of the guys of the spring for sure. I mean, and it's those two, I mean, the former high school teammates, I think are going to be a formidable duo, along with Fabian, along with Braden Fisk when he's back, along with, we'll see if Tafase could break his way in there, or Daniel Lyons could break his way in there. I mean, it is a deep, deep group in there, as we've talked about a good bit.
Yeah, I can't wait to see Tafase develop as he becomes more of a technical player, because he has so much natural ability and strength. So he's going to be fun to watch. And listen, we haven't even thrown Braden Fisk into the mix inside. So that's going to be fascinating to watch in the fall for sure. And of course, listen, they're about done. We don't know exactly what the format of practice will be on Thursday. We are anticipating a lighter day because of the spring showcase, which I'm assuming is going to be part spring game, part other. I don't know that for a fact, but I wasn't here last spring. I think you guys saw something similar.
The last few years, they kind of play like a half more traditionally, and then they do in the second half, they do the game with where they bring the guest coaches out. I think this year, isn't it? It's Charlie and another guy from the 93 team against, who is it? It's two guys from the 2013 team, I want to say.
I believe that's right. And I've seen the graphic, but I have totally.
I'll pull it up.
Drawing a blank.
Good information.
I think Henry Crockett is the other.
It's Charlie Ward and Henry Crockett against Carlos Williams and PJ Williams.
Okay, all right, yeah.
Not the brothers. That's funny. The same last name, but those two aren't the brothers. That's Carlos and Vince.
Yeah. So. I didn't realize Carlos and Vince were brothers. Okay, all right, that makes sense. All right, listen, I think that's going to be a fun day for FSU fans that get up here, and FSU will have one more practice after Saturday. So we will have a post. We'll have a Friday review of Thursday's practice. I will not. Well, I may be here Friday. We got to talk about Friday internally, because there's a lot of moving parts going on. There's the varsity club golf tournament, which I'm supposed to play in, and so we'll figure out Seminole Sidelines for Friday. But we are going to have a review of the spring game next Monday, if not sooner, and then obviously a recap of the entire spring on Wednesday, as we get a round table of Osceola writers, analysts, and everything else. And we might even get Mark Salva to jump in here and Fish to jump in here if they get a chance to watch the spring showcase on Saturday afternoon. But Kurt, anything else you want to add about practice?
No, I think I'm good.
All right. Now we're going to turn the show over to the man, the myth, the legend, Fish. Fish, you've done a lot of writing for us as it pertains to recruiting. You are very tuned in to not only what Florida State has in each room on its current roster, but also some of their key targets. They do have 9 players committed to for this particular class, but you have a what I'm calling you're calling the Baker's dozen. And for you folks at home, you can see the names scrolling across the bottom of the screen. And so, Fish, I just want to take you through that one by one, what you think stands out about these kids and Florida State's chance to sign these guys. We know Cam Davis is committed at running back, but there's a kid that we really like. We both love his film. If you get a chance to talk to him, which I have after his unofficial visit 2 weeks ago, you get really excited about him because he seems like a really bright, sharp kid that's got a really good future in front of him. But Christian Clark from Mountain Point High School in Phoenix, Arizona, his mother, if you've not called our show before, was worked in the recruiting office when she was a student at Florida State. And, of course, his uncle is former FSU quarterback and baseball player Kenny Felder. So just a little bit about why you think Clark is a good fit for Florida State and, do you think they have a good chance at landing him?
Yeah, I mean, the fact that his mom went to Florida State and worked in the football office and his uncle played at Florida State, you got to like those ties and their chances of landing him. I really like Christian. You turn on the film, he's as impressive as there is. When you turn on that film, his ability to cut on either foot, he has the ability to cut and explode out of his breaks. He has very good vision. I like that he's patient, and he also doesn't just bounce everything out to the outside. Most high school running backs, they're not that patient, so they want to, push everything to the outside, get into the open field. He's willing to run between the tackles and find that daylight, and once he does, he's able to exploit it. I think he's one of the better backs I've watched that is on their board, and with the running back that's already committed, I think he'd be a great addition to their class.
Yeah, and then, of course, your second guy out of your 13 was the wide receiver prospect. I call him Josh Trader because I cannot pronounce his name. I get stumbled over the SH and then back to the SA. But anyway, how do you pronounce his first name?
I think it's Joshua Trader.
Okay. All right. A different spelling. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Josh, I'm still gonna go with Josh.
Yeah, he's a kid that's on a roster that already has another wide receiver, Jeremiah Smith, who's committed to Ohio State. Trader's a big time prospect. He can play wide receiver. He also is a good enough athlete to play probably corner on defense. But he's a guy that makes big plays. He's very smooth. The game comes very easy to him. Like I said, he reminds me a little bit of Rashad Green, who came out of St. Thomas and had a great career at Florida State. But this is a kid that likes Florida State a lot. He's got them in their top two along with Miami. They'll have a very good shot at landing them. Getting Edwin Joseph last year kind of opened up that pipeline. This is another kid that possibly comes out of Chaminade, and Florida State could get a really good one.
Well, the next kid to me, I don't have any more inside knowledge than you do. But certainly he's a kid that's committed to Georgia. Landon Thomas from Colquitt County, Georgia, in Moultrie, 6'4", 235. Now, this is a kid, Fish, despite being committed to Georgia, has been on campus multiple times since the start of this calendar year. He was on campus last Thursday. The recruiting services tried to get an interview with him. He didn't want to talk, which I totally respect and understand. He's got a lot going on, and sometimes the less you say, the better. But kind of your thoughts on you and I are both advocates. The greater number of times you get them on campus, the greater chances of landing them. I think that's just common sense. But what are your thoughts on their chances to get Landon Thomas?
I mean, the word is he's going to be back for the spring game. So if that happens, or they are able to get him back on campus again, you got to start to like their chances. They had a commitment from him early on before he became a big-time prospect. Georgia's going to be tough to beat because they do have a history of producing tight ends over the last couple of years. They have the best tight end in college football heading into next year. But this kid keeps showing up at Florida State. It's not that far from them. I look at it if they could keep getting them on campus, building that relationship. And they show production this year at that position. They sit in a good spot. They're in the top two. It's them and Georgia. I don't really think there's much else as far as recruiting. So when you're going head-to-head and you only have one school to beat instead of 3 or 4, you got to like your chances. If he doesn't go to Georgia, the most likely destination is Florida State.
Yep. And listen, I think it says a lot that he's been back here. Now he's not far from here. He's from Moultrie, but I think I think it says a lot that he's committed and has been here as many times as he has. And I think it's only going to help FSU's chances with him that they're going to be able to showcase multiple tight ends in the fall with who they have because of all the talent they have and the depth they have at tight end under Mike Norvell. And as you've said many times on this program and in our conversations, Mike loves using tight ends. You talked about it going back to his Memphis days where he used a ton of 12 and 13 personnel, 2 and 3 tight end sets. And, listen, I think what they're going to be able to do with Kyle Morlock and Jaheim Bell and Mark Easton Douglas and even Preston Daniel, I think it's going to make an impression on Landon Thomas, because of the versatility and the amount of times that they're going to use these tight ends in different ways. Now, I'm not saying that Landon can do the same things that Jaheim can. He's probably more like Kyle than he is Jaheim. But anyway, I think that's going to help Florida State in his recruitment. It is the fact that Florida State's going to be able to showcase the tight ends a lot this year. So I think that'll help him there. The next guy you got on here is Charles Lester. Listen, again, Georgia's on his list, as is Ohio State. And, the last time he was on campus, he made a comment to the recruiting services, including ours, that in his heart, he was committed to Florida State. But, listen, I believe he's got an official visit set up for Florida State, for Ohio State, and Georgia. You think he's in the lead. I think he's in the lead. And I believe that you feel like Florida State is waiting to see what he does before they determine where they go, who's the next corner.
Yeah, there's no question. I mean, all signs point to Florida State. We talk about being on campus. He's been on campus multiple times this offseason. He loves Florida State. You got to like the position of being when that dream school and the kid, he's kind of like LaMarcus Joyner, his recruitment. Ohio State came after him. These other schools came after him, but it was very hard for LaMarcus to say no to Florida State. I think Lester is going to be in the same position. It's just going to be very difficult for him to turn away the one school he really wants to go to. Hey, you know what? You're going after the right kids when Ohio State and Georgia are part of the mix. He's a big-time corner. He can shut down half the field, and this is the type of kid that can really help your secondary early on. I don't know if he's a day one starter, but because it's so difficult for freshmen to start or get a lot of playing time right away, but he's a guy that could come in and contribute and help out in that back end of your defense.
Yeah, and then, of course, another kid that we both like, and a very highly recruited kid, as most of these. Listen, as we go through this list, a lot of these kids are going to, as you said, Florida State's back in, they're back where they belong in the recruiting front. We're hearing a lot of Ohio State, a lot of Oregon, USC, Texas type stuff, and we'll get into that a little bit later as we talk about some of the kids that were on campus yesterday. But KJ Bolden, Buford High School, 6'1", 180. He's listed as an athlete. We got to list him as a safety. Obviously, plays both offense and defense. What are your thoughts on FSU's chances to land KJ Bolden?
I didn't think they had much of a shot, but him coming on campus and seeing when he spoke very highly to Florida State. I don't know how much success Florida State's had out of Buford High School. It just seems like a school that those kids go to the SEC, but they're in it. That's all you can ask. You add a Charles Lester and you add a KJ Bolden, all of a sudden your secondary goes from being pretty good to very good. And how I feel. It's not a knock against coaches. I think coaching's important, but you start to bring these type of players in, and the coaching aspect gets a lot easier when you got guys like this that are 5-star elite corners that could come in, shut down the pass. This kid could also help against the run. You can bring him up in the box. He's a physical kid. So these are difference makers in that back end. And when you start to go play better teams, you play the Clemsons and these SEC schools, you start rolling in with these type of players, it helps you match up with them a lot easier.
Yeah, listen, great players certainly help make great coaches. So there's no doubt about that. And he's certainly a guy that has got the attention of most every major college football program. And I think it's going to be fascinating to see how that plays out. But again, like I said, the thing that impressed me if I'm a Florida State fan when he was here last, is at heart I'm FSU. I'm committed to FSU. I believe is almost what he said verbatim. Then a kid that you found kind of sort of fish, Ricky Knight from the Benjamin School in North Palm Beach. Ricky Knight III has been on campus multiple times this year. Really impressive kid to talk to. Just tells you've seen a lot of him, not only in 7-on-7, but you've also seen him in person as a player.
Yeah, you could tell he has a high football IQ, and that's the one thing. A lot of these kids are good athletes, and they know football, but they don't really know it. I think this is a kid that could come in. He's going to learn a system right away. He understands positioning, how to position himself between a receiver and himself. He gets very good position. He doesn't get lost in coverage. A lot of guys, they open up, they get kind of lost in coverage that they have to flip back over their hips. He's very fluid. He's got length. He can shut down a guy. He's a guy that you could play, outside. You could move him into the slot and have him play slot corner. He may be to play some safety, free safety. So you got to like these type of guys that have that versatility to play multiple positions in the secondary. I've always said that if you recruit a guy that's just strictly a safety and he's like an in the box, strong safety, old traditional guy that, Mickey Andrews used to have, I guess they call him the rover position. If he doesn't play more than that in the secondary and doesn't pan out, then what do you do with them? This kid's not like that. If it doesn't work out on the outside, you can move him on the inside and he could play, like I said, like nickel or slot corner. He can do so much. He's a very good player. He's right there with Lester. I think just he's more under the radar, but I think this spring you're going to see all the big time programs, the Georgias, the Alabamas, everybody's going to be all over this kid. Florida State got in on him early. He's been on campus multiple times. He really likes Florida State. He just did take a visit to Miami. I wonder if this is one of those kids, though, is a little impressionable that every campus he goes on, if that school is going to be the school that he likes once he leaves campus. It seems like he's going to be one of those type of kids that he steps on a campus. Hey, that was my best visit until the next visit. So,
well, listen, and we've had most kids are not going to say that, right? I mean, they're just not going to say it. They don't. Most of us don't feel like that's how we're built internally, but it is. We had the linebacker from Texas come in, and he was blown away by his Florida State visit. Came in, but he was honest, and he said, "Listen, my opinion changes almost after every visit." And I can't remember Bryce's last name off the top of my head. I should have looked it up before we did this. But anyway, he left Florida State, and you would have thought, listen, Florida State's got a great chance to sign him, and they still may, the kid from Texas. But he released a top 8 last week, and Florida State was not in it. Of course, now, listen, I made the argument yesterday talking to a group of Florida State fans that I don't think recruiting's ever been more fluid because coaches and recruiting staff members can talk to people all the time. There's a dead period. There's still communication going on, social media, phone, text, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, whatever they're using. And then you throw the NIL on top of that. I think and listen, we've seen 2 weeks on March 15th, one of the best tight ends or best athletes, tight end defensive ends in the country, 2025, Elias Williams on March 15th said that Florida State was his number one on his list. 3 days ago, he committed to Georgia. So recruiting is a fluid situation.
Listen,
these kids are impressionable.
Yeah, I mean, you saw with Jalen Ramsey, they weren't in it. Then all of a sudden, they bring in Coach Pruitt, and he had a relationship with him, and they landed him. And I forgot the name of the corner that came from D.C. I think Florida State got him in a visit on the last 2 weekends before signing day. He ended up coming to Florida State, starting and ending up in the NFL. I forgot the kid's name, out of Maryland, D.C. area a few years ago. But kids change. If Florida State makes a run at the playoffs, they win the ACC, all bets are off when it comes to these guys. I don't care if a kid doesn't even list them right now. If they make the playoffs and they still have one of those top kids has a visit, they could squeeze in on a kid that nobody thought they had a shot at right now that may not even be on their recruiting radar. That's how quickly recruiting changes. Like you said, It's very fluid, and anything can happen at any moment. You just never know.
Well, listen, we've seen a lot of kids leave Florida State, very impressed with their visits, and they put themselves in. We talked about Jordan Seaton 2 weeks ago, Jordan Seaton, before his visit to Florida State, had released 2 weeks prior to that a top 14 that Florida State was not a part of. And he came out of that visit and obviously said that, hey, I'm going to have to reevaluate my list, and I'll be back in touch with everybody when I do. Now, if you told me you were going to put one defensive end on your baker's dozen, I would have bet it was Booker Pickett from Tampa Wharton, but it was not. It was Dylan Stevenson from Columbus High School in Miami, Florida, 6'4", 215. It sounds like you think Florida State sits in a really good spot there. Obviously, Derek McClendon is transferring out of the program, so there's actually an additional spot open for a defensive end. But what do you like about Dylan and Florida State's chances of getting him?
Yeah, I mean, he's like what they like right now. Big, long, athletic, has room to grow. He's only 215, 220 right now. He was at Miami Killian last year. The relationship started prior with Derek Gibson being his head coach, and they got a jump start on him. He's been on campus, I believe, a few times already. I think he's got the potential. This is a potential prospect, a guy that 2 years from now that needs to put on the weight, get a little bigger and stronger. But you see his ability to get off the ball. He could put pass rush on a quarterback. He gets off the ball real well. He holds up against the run pretty well for an undersized guy, but the frame's there for him to get much bigger. This is a kid that's going to be 250, 255 in college and be a very good player. My whole thing with Booker Pickett, I just think they're coming from too far behind, and they have a lot of room. They got him on campus. That was a great start, but it's a recruitment. Tampa's been Tampa's kind of weird for Florida State. Some schools they do well at, some schools they don't. I just think the Pickett kid is one of those kids that they're in the ball game now, but I don't think they're really one of his leaders.
Yeah, listen, and to your point on Tampa, I've heard that multiple times from guys in Tampa, from high school coaches, and even from guys in the media who know high school coaches there. It's weird to me that Tampa would be so hit or miss for Florida. I mean, I know people call it's a Gator town, whatever, but anyways, Clemson's gotten big prospects out of there for years and years and years. But hopefully Florida State will continue to.
But you've seen Armwood. Armwood was a school that Florida State for a long time had a very difficult time getting players out of there. Heck, they had to take for Chaz Neal, who was basically like a 1 or 2 star kid at the time, who was a major project. It's a weird school. You look at Berkeley Prep, they've never been able to get traction at a school like that's produced a lot of very good football players from the last few years. It's just, like I said, it's an area that is hit or miss for Florida State. There's some schools, and it's based off where those head coaches went to college or their fan base. It's very split. That. It's just you'll have some schools that have Florida State ties, and then there's other schools that they won't land a kid out of.
Yeah. And listen, moving to the state of Mississippi from Tampa, we got Cam Franklin. He's been on campus. As you say, not only one of the best defensive tackles in the Southeast, but one of the best in the country, and his offer list reflects that. And now he was in town and a couple weeks ago, and he did say that the one thing that Mike Norvell and his staff wanted to do was try to nail down one of his official visit dates. As far as I know, that has not happened yet, but he definitely had not ruled it out when we spoke to him when he was on campus to watch spring practice. What's your take on Kamarian Franklin?
I mean, anytime you go into Mississippi, you're taking your chances. You're going to spend a lot of resources to pull in one kid. This, from what I've heard, it's basically Miami, Florida State, which is interesting that a kid from Mississippi is looking outside the state. But if that's true, then you have to feel they got a very good shot at landing a kid like this. It all comes down to, you saw it a couple years ago. Florida State landed a defensive tackle from Mississippi that they found at their camp. I don't think the kid had any offers, and then all of a sudden the home schools came in and put the pressure on. But I think where Florida State sits with this one, they actually have a legitimate shot at possibly pulling this kid.
Well, and another kid I think they've got a really good shot at pulling in this class, basically because of what he said when he's been here. As you said, that could change on his next visit. But Jason Zandamela, the offensive center guard from Clearwater International, 6'3", 290. He was on campus about 3 weeks ago, and we interviewed him at the end of his visit. We asked him who was in the lead, and he kind of got this big grin on his face and turned around and looked up at the Seminole head on top of the Moore building. So just based on that, I think that Florida State is leading. He's an in-state kid. He does have some quite an impressive offer list. I believe he's going to visit Oklahoma, among others. Just your thoughts on Jason?
Yeah, I really like him. He's a dominant player off the ball. He's very physical. He's a kid that when he comes off the ball, he shakes defenders. He's violent with his hands. He's a kid that, the fact that they got a Lucas Simmons already on campus that went to the same school, and he's already doing pretty well, even though he's not going to start. He's been shown flashes so far during spring practice. I just think that having that comfort level of Florida State, it just seems like the way he speaks about Florida State is like he's already there. When I've seen him interviewed or the process, sometimes kids give that away like they're almost on the team already. I think he's a guy that Florida State sits in a very good spot. They may be in the driver's seat pretty much. I feel they are. It's just only a matter of time. It's not if, it's when.
Yeah, if they would just go ahead and offer Joseph Ionata, they could have a 3 linemen from Tampa on the same offensive line. So we'll see how that goes. All right, so you have another tight end on your Baker's dozen, and obviously Florida State under Mike Norvell has stockpiled tight ends. So you think they could take 2 of this class? You have him as basically 1B. Has been on campus several times. Again, another kid that is going to be recruited by a bunch of schools, Georgia, Clemson, among others. Kind of what's your thoughts on Kylan Fox?
Hey, listen, let the state of Georgia keep producing these kids, because you know what? I mean, they go like 5, 6, 7 deep. Georgia can't take all of them. So he looks impressive. He looks like a big wide receiver playing on offense. You could split him out wide. He's going to gain weight and eventually become an inline guy where he could come off and help block in the run game. But he has a lot of ability. He's another guy that you just know will do well in Mike Norvell's offense, very athletic. You can move him around. You don't have to just stick him at one position. But I don't think there's a whole lot of difference between him and Landon. These are both big-time players. You lay on one of them, you've done very well. If they somehow pull off both of them, we could say that the tight end room has definitely finally flipped into a positive light.
Now, the next guy, this one kind of surprised me. I did not expect, with Florida State already having 2 safeties committed, to find a 3rd safety on your list. But you had Ricardo Jones, I've watched his tape. He's unbelievably impressive player. Just why Ricardo, and what is your thinking with 3 safeties, or do you think all 3 of those, do you think they'll sign 3 safeties?
There's a good chance that I think that one of the other 2 safeties that are committed won't end up in their class. And there's also a good chance that Ricardo ends up as a linebacker. You look at these guys now, you don't want a real traditional linebacker anymore. You want these guys that can play in space. They play a lot of spread teams. Most of the teams they play are spread. So having a guy that could cover a tight end or a wide receiver in space, but also being able to come up into the box and be able to play the run, I think he's a guy that could convert into a linebacker or a hybrid type player in the scheme that Florida State runs, where he can play either close to the line or drop back into coverage. He's so versatile, and he's one of these guys that you want to recruit now. He fits all the criteria, what you want a defender to be like in the modern day football.
Yeah. And listen, they could use some. We both think they need to fill some, have more depth at linebacker, and a lot of times you will see a safety grow into a linebacker. So you could see 3 safeties and signed, and then one of them end up in more of in the box player. Kid we both like, Jonathan Daniels, a tackle guard from Pensacola Pine Forest High School, 6'3", 280. You said he did measure at the Under Armour camp a shade under 6'3", but to your point, he does have very long arms. He has been on campus several times. He's not been on campus in several weeks. I think the last time he was on campus was in January. I could be wrong about that. It would not surprise me to see him on Saturday at the spring game. But what are your thoughts on Daniels? I thought for a while there he might be getting close to committing to Florida State. He seemed like he was in a good spot. What are your thoughts on Jonathan Daniels?
Listen, his film doesn't lie. He's a very good football player, and we've talked about you can never have enough offensive linemen. Is he a true traditional tackle? There have been guys like Isaiah Wynn, who was he was out of Lakewood High School in St. Pete. He played tackle for University of Georgia at a high level, ended up a first-round pick. Daniel's a little undersized, but he's got real long arms. He's got the length of a guy that's 6'5", 6'6". You wonder at some point, does this kid's time run out to commit? They need tackles. Is he going to end up playing guard in college? And do they need guards if this Jason Zandamela kid commits? Does he run out of time? I think he's one of these kids that probably would be my best advice if he wanted to go to Florida State or one of these schools is to pull the trigger now, because for all his talent, I think that he could slip in the recruiting world if he waits too long, whether it's a Florida State or any other school he's interested in right now. I think it's one of those situations like, if he gets on campus for the spring game or he's there this summer, I think that he'll either commit or they'll move on from him.
How many offensive linemen? They have 0 committed right now for 2024. How many offensive linemen do you think Florida State will take out of the high school ranks for this class?
I say at least 3. I just don't think with this staff anymore that they're going to take 2 or less. I just think they know how important offensive linemen. If they could get 2 tackles and 1, swing guard, if this is their second tackle, if Daniels is their second tackle, and they get another tackle, and all of a sudden they get the Zandamela kid. This kid's kind of a swing player that he could play guard or tackle. I think 1 guard, 2 tackles, and then eventually you'll probably see them go after 2 or 3 or more guys out of the portal. I look at history. They're going to continue to recruit the portal for offensive linemen. Yep.
And then, of course, your last guy, number 13, is a really good athlete, can do just about anything on the football field, extremely fast. Micah Danzy from Florida High School here in Tallahassee was on campus last week. He's got 3 official visits set right now out of his 5. He's got Florida State, Florida, and Miami. Track is going to play a factor in this. He spent a lot of time with the track and field staff on his last unofficial visit to Tallahassee. How are you feeling about Mackay and Florida State?
Yeah, I don't know how you feel about this, and I don't like to say this about a lot of players. I think this kid's one of the more important kids that they're recruiting in their class. 1, he's a local kid. There haven't been a lot of great local kids recently. And 2, when you have his speed, and speed changes everything. You saw with Kermit Whitfield in the national championship game. Guys with this type of speed, they just don't grow on trees, especially even in Florida where a lot of kids run fast. They don't run this fast. This kid has a next level speed. I think when you have a chance to land a guy that could basically change a game on one play, whether it's as a kick returner, a punt returner, even on offense as a running back, he's going to play kind of that Lawrence Tola-Philly role where he could come on a jet sweep. He could change a game the first time he touches the ball, and speed's intimidating. He's got that type of speed to change a game. And honestly, I think Florida State's got a great shot. They finally got him back on campus. As close as he is, you'd like to see him be on campus almost any chance he gets, especially since they like these kids to come on campus for practices and everything. You'd like to see him be living on campus. But he's a kid I think is a big-time player, and he'd be a great addition to their class.
Yeah, I agree. And listen, obviously in the thick of it with having a good track program at Florida State, he spent some time with the coaches, obviously very familiar with the lay of the land in Tallahassee. He hears about the program all the time. But I will say this, I grew up here. My high school was famous for guys like Kevin Carter leaving Tallahassee to go to Florida. Zach Pillar, who both of these guys are future NFL guys. Zach left Lincoln to go to Georgia Tech, ultimately ended up at Florida. For people that get upset when kids leave their hometown, it's natural for a 17 or 18-year-old to want to have a new experience outside of where they've grown up. It's one of the exciting things about getting to being 18 and 19 and 20 is to be able to get out on your own. So I don't think if they don't get Micah, I don't think it reflects anything on Florida State. And I think it's sometimes a kid just wants a new adventure. Obviously, they're in the middle of it, and I'm not talking about Micah Danzy as a individual here. I'm just talking about what kids are thinking at 18 and 19 years old that, hey, I've been in Tallahassee my entire life. Do I want to go somewhere else? And the same thing will apply to a kid in Tuscaloosa and in Auburn, Alabama, and in Gainesville, Florida, and Miami, Florida. We see a lot of kids leave Miami to come to Florida State. So I think that's only natural, but obviously they're still right in there and in the thick of it. And obviously had a very good visit. Went ahead and committed to the official visit. Now, listen, that's one of those things where it wouldn't surprise me if he said, you know what, I know enough about Florida State and I've been there enough that I don't need to have the official visit, so I'm going to take 5 official visits elsewhere. But we see that happen occasionally, not a lot. But anyway, I think they're in a good spot with him. And listen, as you and I have talked about multiple times, if Florida State lays down another 10-plus win season, some of these questions are going to be taken care of by what FSU does on the field. And obviously they're having great success in whatever they're talking about with these kids, because we get very rarely hear any kid talk about, well, I didn't enjoy my visit, or, I don't want to talk about my visit. In fact, they had several prospects on campus yesterday, Fish. I kind of want to get your take on this. They had 2 offensive linemen on campus, including one of the best offensive linemen in the country, and Brandon Baker from Santa Ana, California, plays at Maitre D High School. I believe that's how you say it. It's obviously a very historic high school, prolific for putting college football players, sending kids to play college football. A lot of big time players. We talk about Florida State's brand. This kid made a point to get to Florida State. And all the way from California. I think that talks to getting back to the winning ways. Florida State's back on brand. He talked about the fact that he's got a great amount of respect for the relationship he's built with Alex Atkins on the phone. He has committed right now is currently committed to taking an official visit to Ohio State. He has 4 more left. He had not, when we spoke to him yesterday, he was on the front end of a 2-day trip. He had not had a chance to talk to Mike Norvell one-on-one yet. He did observe practice, was very impressed with that. Really liked the environment, really likes the fact that Alex Atkins is down to earth, and he wanted to get here. And listen, he said that he is paying attention to the program's success. He said that the fact that they've had 25 10-win seasons over the history of the program was something that he paid attention to, and that they are reestablishing a winning culture. It would not surprise me if he came out of the end of his visit, which will end today at some point, committing to an official visit. But what does it say that they are getting? This guy's a 7th-rated offensive tackle in the nation, and that he could, he flies over a lot of good college football programs to visit Tallahassee, and he's going to Georgia and Texas next. He's got Georgia unofficial to Georgia on Thursday, and then we'll spend the weekend in Austin checking out Texas' spring game. What does it say to you, not necessarily about Brandon Baker, but about what the program's doing to get a kid like that to make it a priority to get to Florida State?
No, it just shows you that the program has flipped the script, and they're heading in the right direction, because these kids 2-3 years ago, they had a hard time getting 3 stars interested in them, let alone these type of prospects that these are game changers. These are guys that could come in. There's a difference. I know people think, listen, stars don't matter once kids are on campus. I get it. But if you could pull in these 5-star elite players, there's less room for them to fail. There's a reason why they're highly rated kids. There's a guy that's a 3 or 4-star kid could turn into a first-round pick at tackle, but there's a reason why everybody wants those elite 5-star players, and guys like this are difference makers. He could come in. He's a guy that's not going to need a whole lot of coaching. The development stage, he's already further ahead in the development stage, and give you a chance to play right away and have an impact right away. So anytime you could get one of these guys, I'm all for it.
Yeah, and listen, it's very seldom that we see Florida State not increase its standing with or improve its standing with the kid after they meet with the coaches individually. And we know he's meeting with Mike at some point before he leaves. He said that as much yesterday. So I would, somebody did kind of continue to, hey, where does Florida State rank? First, he was being polite. They're up there. This visit certainly helped. I'm not even done with the visit yet. Then they asked him where Florida State stood out of his top 12, and he goes 10 or 11 or 12. I would expect that after he comes out of his, he's already said that one of the things that he likes about Mike and just his limited exposure to him yesterday was the fact that Mike comes across as genuine and down to earth. He said the exact same comment about Alex Atkins. So listen, again, I've said this repeatedly, and if you listen to our show enough, you're probably going to get sick of me saying it. But whatever they're doing in there is working. These kids are enjoying their time in Tallahassee, and just about every kid they seem to improve their stock when they have a visit here. All right, so another kid. Now, this is kind of one of those more interesting things. They offered Owen Strebig, a huge kid. He is 6'7" and about 280 pounds. He is a rising junior from Waukesha, Wisconsin. Waukesha, Wisconsin, Catholic Memorial High School. He is currently ranked as the 18th best offensive tackle prospect in the 2025 recruiting class. Fish, again, another kid. Now, this kid did not come all the way across country, but he came halfway across the country to visit Florida State. That impresses me. He did not have an offer coming in. He left with an offer yesterday. His quote was, "They did end up offering me today, so I'm obviously very thankful for that. I really like the staff." And we hear this a lot, and this is the end of the one quote I put in my article. They weren't just telling me what I wanted to hear. They were telling me they were straight shooting. That's something that is really important to me. Now, he said some other things, but listen, he's got an impressive offer list. You talk about offensive line factories, Iowa, Wisconsin, Michigan, Notre Dame in particular produce offensive linemen at a pretty prolific rate. Very early in the process, the kid's got some work to do. He admitted as much. He's got to continue to refine his pass blocking. I have not had a chance to look at his film in depth yet, but again, another offensive lineman coming cross country to visit Florida State.
I'm all for them offering them, and good luck. You look at this kid's picture. This kid's staying in the Midwest. Man, I'm sorry. They pull this kid, honestly. Just give frickin' Atkins you better double his salary again. I mean, they start pulling these kids. I mean, this kid looks like he belongs in Wisconsin or Notre Dame or Illinois or Iowa. I ain't gonna lie. I'm glad they got him on campus. It was spring break probably for him. He wanted some warm weather, but I'm not going to put my neck out on this one, man.
Yeah. Well, listen, it's very early. I mean, the kid just got the offer yesterday. Now, listen, they do have the wild card. Who was hanging around him all day at practice was another Wisconsin native, and I did not know that Ryan Bartow was from Wisconsin. I always thought he was from Miami.
He's from wherever he tells you he's from.
So he was hanging out, and so actually the kid mentioned that it was good to be around somebody from Wisconsin. We kind of speak the same language, and then Bartow had a great tweet, something about the homeland is good. After the kid got the offer, so that was.
I'm looking at his top schools: Indiana, Iowa, Michigan, Minnesota, Notre Dame. Dude. If they pull this kid, honestly, I'm really impressed. I mean,
what's crazy is I stood next to the kid, and first of all, my neck is still sore from looking up at him. I mean, he's tremendously huge, and he's not even. Listen, he's skinny at 6'7", 280. I can't wait to see how. I hope they get him back next year so I can see how much bigger he's gotten. But you're right. Listen, you fly over a lot of good programs to.
I remember Coach Darlington, who's, he coached at Apopka. He's now at, I think, DeLand High School. He had, at the time, Wisconsin was playing in the a bowl game in Orlando. And he goes, "Hey, do you know anybody at Wisconsin that maybe me and my son could, go watch practice or this or that. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? Let me see what I could do. And he ends up going to Wisconsin's practice. He called me. He goes, my son can't play there. And his son was like one of the top rated offensive linemen in Florida. He goes, Fish, my son's 6'3", 6'4", like 265. He goes, their kids are all like 6'7", 6'8", 6'9". He goes, I don't think you realize like how big Wisconsin's O-line is. And when you said Owen Streberg from, Catholic Memorial, and you said 6'7", 280, this kid's probably not even done growing.
No,
he
he's
just
not.
He's just like a big old country kid from the Midwest. He's going to end up going to one of those corn-fed schools. He'll probably end up in like Nebraska or Wisconsin or Minnesota. So good luck to him.
We'll see. Well, listen, and the weird thing about
I don't think we're going to be discussing him after this podcast.
Well, that's fine. We're going to talk. We're going to talk about him today. That's fine.
All right.
There's going to be over the course of the next years. There's going to be a lot of kids we talk about once and then never heard from again. So that'll happen. From that is the nature of recruiting. But hey, he was the flavor of the day yesterday. He got an offer. He said the weird thing about it was, and we've talked about the fact that sometimes they wait a while to offer a kid because they don't really know them well. Yeah. I do think he mentioned that they had basically just started communicating of recently. So you got to think that there's something they really liked about his film, because there's been some really highly rated kids that have even closer that Florida State has not offered because they don't really have got a chance to sit down one-on-one, or the kid hasn't been on campus, yada, yada, yada.
Hey, Pat, my son says I always jinx everything. So there's probably 100% chance now that this kid commits to Florida State in the next week or two.
All right. Well, I'm here for it. I'm here for it. Because then I can give you I'll give you shit.
That's what makes it fun and be more fun now. If I say they have no shot at him and the kid comes, everybody, not only you, everybody on the message.
Well, here's the thing I don't understand about people that do what we do, right? All right. So we have to one of the things we are paid to do is to provide analysis or opinions, right? Yeah. I love it just as much when I get proven wrong as when I get proven right. All right. For instance, we were talking about Bless Harris. I watched his Lamar film. There was no doubt that Bless Harris was a very talented, long athlete. But he turned out he has gotten so much better since he got into Florida State. And I've told people, listen, I didn't know that. I did not think the kid would start last year, and he starts and of course got hurt and missed most of the season. But he is, and I'm very proud to be wrong about that. Listen, you cannot be right about everything we talk about. We talk about too much to be right all the time. It's no different than coaches are not 100% on every play they call. They are wrong and they overcome it. But anyway. It's kind of, but anyway, so yeah, I hope that I get to, relive your Owen Streberg. We'll never hear from him again statement. I'm just going to say, I'm going to text you his picture every time he pops up. All right. So our last 2025 kid to talk about, and this is another kid that has been on campus, and he is a highly, highly recruited kid, and that is Alvin Henderson from Elba, Alabama. He is, I think, ranked as one of the top 3 or 4 running backs in the nation for 2025. This is at least his second time on campus this year. Coming out of his meeting, and we'll have a report on this in the Osceola tomorrow. But basically coming out, we talked to him for about 3 or 4 minutes as he was concluding his visit. He will be back on campus probably sooner rather than later. He mentioned May or June. Did not know whether he would camp or just come back for an unofficial visit. But Alvin Henderson, he said that what he was told by Mike Norvell and David Johnson, the running backs coach and recruiting coordinator, that he is their top priority for 2025 at the running back position. And we hear this a lot. Feels like home. That what stands out about Florida State, it feels like home. Got some work to do. He also mentioned Auburn, Tennessee, Alabama, Texas, Oregon, and USC. So, listen, there's a lot of road to hoe with these 2025 kids. But, again, just your impressions of getting him back on campus again, a guy that is, obviously.
I don't know where Elba, Alabama. I have no clue where that is in Alabama. So I'm sorry.
It's in L.A., Lower Alabama.
All right. Well, then they should have a better shot if he's closer to Mobile and stuff. But man, I don't know if you've watched his film, I don't need to
have.
see.
It's been a while.
I don't need to see more than like 2 or 3 clips.
He's like an 8-play guy. You look at 8 plays.
I watched about 3. I saw enough. I mean, just the way he leans, the way he runs. He's pretty special back. These are the guys that hold up Heisman trophies.
Yeah, and listen, and here's what's weird. You don't really, when you think about running backs and receivers, you think about guys that want the ball all the time.
Yeah.
You know, they don't want to share the ball. So one thing that he did say stuck out to me. He likes how FSU uses its running backs. All 4 get plenty of touches between the start of the season and end of the season. So he's not a guy, based on what he said, that's going to want to carry the ball 30 times. He understands that there's going to be a couple of running backs on the roster with him that are just as talented, if not close to as talented as he is. So I think that unselfish nature and what he said in that statement says a lot to me.
Yeah, he's a more physical version of Reggie Bush. I mean, he's just wow. I'm watching these highlights while I'm talking to you, and like most guys don't impress me, but damn. I can see why they like this kid. I mean, he hits you. Like he lowered his shoulder on one play and laid 2 guys out. Wow.
Yeah,
This one's not hard. This is the one that anybody can evaluate and see that he's got talent.
All right. Well, Fish. All right. So I'm not going to get to see the spring game or spring showcase because I am going to the Atlanta Rivals camp, the same Sunday deal, invite only that you did in Miami. What am I in store for? I have not. I've been to college camps.
Just get get names, numbers, emails, man. That's all I gotta say. Get names, numbers, emails because we need them.
we will definitely do it. We'll definitely do it. Well, Fish, listen, I appreciate you. I know you're busy taking time out of your midday on Wednesday to help us out. And of course, are you getting up for the spring game?
No, I don't think I'll be up there, but I'll watch it. I'll take a look at it and I'll give my opinion after I watch the spring game. And you know how the spring games are. You know, sometimes it looks great. Sometimes it's just like, what am I watching? But I'm excited to see what you guys have been talking about for the last 3 weeks and see if it matches up. You know.
Well, hopefully on Saturday I'm going to be at a Braves game if they're at home, but we'll see. We'll see how that.
Give me a Braves hat and send it to me. All right.
I will definitely do it. Listen, if you just listen or watch our video cast / podcast, please go to theosceola.com or floridastate.rivals.com and check us out. Fish has his article in depth about his Baker's dozen, the 13 guys that he would like to see Florida State finish off their 2024 high school recruiting class with. Obviously, we know they're going to the portal. We also got our stories on 2024 4-star offensive tackle Brandon Baker, all of his quotes. We've got Owen Streberg's quotes, video from both of those guys. And then, of course, we'll have Alvin's interview coming up later in the week. And Fish, listen, it's fixing to get crazy again. In about 3 days, the transfer portal opens up. And we'll get into this. We'll get into this next Monday a little bit further. But how active or would you anticipate Florida State being on the giving end of this and the receiving end of this? How many players you think will potentially could transfer out? Where do you think Florida State could look for help in the portal as far as positions?
Yeah, I think that, that linebacker spot, maybe a safety. I think that they have 89 or 88 guys on scholarship, so they're going to have to cut some guys loose. So it will open up some spots. You could see one or two more guys added to the roster between now and the end of the season, the start of the season. It'll be interesting to see what happens with FSU in the quarterback position. Did Duffy do enough this spring to take that second spot? Does Tate decide maybe to move on to another school? Who knows what happens at that position? It's constant. You just never know. You think, oh, this kid's going to stay, and then all of a sudden he's in the portal 2 days later. So I expect it to be real active for most of these schools. I have schools hitting me up. Hey, do you have a wide receiver? Do you have a running back? And guys, you'd be surprised that are hitting me up for those type of players. So
Yeah, well, listen, it's a brave new world in college football with the portal and the NIL and all the things that go along with it. So it's going to be an interesting offseason. I don't think there is an offseason anymore, really. I mean, you're going to go right in this portal period, then get into camps. And before we know it, teams will be reporting for two-a-days or whatever they call fall camp these days in late July, early August, and Florida State will be getting ready for LSU. These days are just ticking off. We're already halfway through the month of April. All right, Fish, man, I appreciate it as always. Always good to talk football with you. Always good to talk recruiting. And again, if you are not a subscriber to the Osceola, please go to theosceola.com or floridastate.rivals.com. We will be back in some form or fashion probably on Friday. A lot going on in Tallahassee surrounding the spring game. So it could be taped, it could be live, but we will certainly be back Monday, Wednesday, and Friday of next week to talk about the spring game, what I learned at Rivals, and what Fish was right and wrong about. See if Owen Streberg has committed by the time Streberg has committed by the time we come back on Seminole Sidelines. All right, Fish, you have a great afternoon. Thanks everybody for joining us, and we'll see you on Friday.
See you later.